I'm Al Filreis,
I'm Anna Safford.
and this is ModPo Minute, actually 5 minutes.
We're hoping to scratch the surface of a short poem that we like.
So let's get started. Well, we're here in the faculty director's office of the Kelly Writers House, my office, and I'm with Laynie Browne. Hi, Laynie.
Hi, Al.
So we're going to talk for 5 minutes about a poem by Charles Bernstein in a book called Recalculating, and the poem is called The Honor of Virtue. And it's 4 lines, and I'll read it. The honor of virtue. What I say is what I meant, and what I saw is what I said. But neither seen nor spoke is what I think I thought. Well, Laynie, what do we do with this? I mean, he's playing around with thinking and saying and seeing. How did you make any sense of it?
I think it's antithetical to sense.
How so? Oh, meaning it doesn't mean anything.
Well, not that it means nothing, but
It stands against
that
sense.
word play that you said, he's playing with the idea of sense
Okay.
and resisting multiple reductive ways of thinking about
Certainly resisting reduction.
thought.
Okay.
Right.
So let's try to unpack the first line. What I
Okay.
say is what I meant. So that's something that we would say in daily life
I
if
think
we did
that's
what it's
transparent
Right,
or
so-
deliberately accessible.
And that is a thing that Charles Bernstein, in his poems of the last decade or so, has been playing with this idea.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, humorously, poetry is exactly what it means. Don't try to find deep meaning. Right?
And at the same time, there's a lot of poets. There are different ethos suggested in that statement. I think that
It's almost
he
a
might
political,
not-
poetic political
that
statement.
he might not agree with. Right?
Right.
Like, I'm as if poetry were always literal, or there were one narrative you could extract. He wouldn't agree
Right.
with that. But some poets might utter this phrase and mean that, and I think he's playing against that.
So it's sincere in that he'd really like us to go, well, let's go with the insincere. It's insincere.
I don't think it's sincere.
Not at all sincere.
No.
Okay. And he gets really less sincere when it says, and what I saw, not say, but saw,
Right.
is what I said. What do you do with saw?
I'm just realizing that saw could also be a verb.
Ah, what I saw, like
So
saw.
cutting in half meaning literally. It's almost like the first line, I'm imagining for some reason now an adolescent saying, I meant what I said. And then saying, actually, I'm cutting that meaning in half. Or the
Okay.
poet's cutting that idea in half,
Ah.
deconstructing it, right?
I love it. But neither seen nor spoke, so he's made a distinction between saying and seeing, but neither seen nor spoke is what I think I thought. Now let's go to the last line. What I think I thought. Okay. Explicate that.
I think there's something more serious happening in the last 2 lines.
Yes.
Which is a sincere and serious statement that what we see or what we read and what we say is not the same thing as thought or our perception of thought. In other words, it's impossible to perfectly translate thought. And there's a gap between speech, poetry, and thought. And I think that's a serious conviction that's in his work.
It's also a fundamental thing in language philosophy, 20th century
Yes.
language philosophy. And of course, Bernstein, a so-called language poet, very interested in the linguistic turn in philosophy. They're very theoretically sophisticated and theoretically well read. So I think I thought is it's a Wittgensteinian idea that there is thinking, and then there is thinking what you thought. And so thinking what I thought is a second level or a meta thought. Thinking about what you thought. And of course you could be wrong about what you thought. You could be thinking incorrectly about what you thought.
Right.
So you said that's serious, but of course when you get too far into it, it becomes a little ridiculous.
Well, it's impossible to keep track of thought.
Yes.
So in a sense, it's kind of ridiculous to
Yes.
imagine that we might. But it's also a serious fascination with perception and language and the limits of transcription.
Right. And transcription gets us back to the fact of the poet who writes things.
Mm-hmm.
And the standard line that Bernstein and others are against is the idea that you think something and then you can manage to write what you think. And of course, writing evades thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, finally on the title, The Honor of Virtue. It's completely ironic.
It's
no?
very oblique to the poem.
Yeah,
right.
The Honor of Virtue. So it suggests that he's not really very serious about this too much.
Right.
This
I
was
would agree.
fun.
This was fun.
Thank you, Laynie.
Thank you.
All right.
If you liked this episode, watch another and subscribe.
And join us for ModPo, a free and open course at modpo.org.